All right, hello and welcome to the first of a series of videos that's going to be concentrating on helping you start your journey in Unity development and 3D programming. This series are going to be a companion to a book called Introduction to Game Programming using C# and Unity 3D, second edition. And this first video is going to basically go over the basics of the IDE, and it will help you to navigate around the IDE and get yourself familiar with the IDE so that you can perform your day-to-day tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so over here we have my Unity IDE opened, and currently I'm using Unity 2022 LTS. Of course, Unity 6 is in preview and is coming out. Most of the stuff that we are going to talk about here is going to apply to um, all of the previous Unity editors and also future Unity editors that are going to be released. So the first things that I would like to concentrate on is actually the way I like to lay out my IDE. And as you can see, I have the scene window over here. I have the hierarchy window over here. I have the game window over here, the project window over here, and the inspector window over here. These are some of the main windows that are going to be providing you with a bunch of information that is required for you to be able to design and develop your 3D application, whether it's a game, an XR application, a mobile application, whatever it happens to be. All right, so let's cover them one by one. The scene window is pretty much where you do majority of your design work. So the scene window is where you're going to be placing all of the models, all of the shapes, and any other objects that are going to be relevant for this particular scene. The hierarchy window is basically a representation of all of the game objects that are currently uh, associated with the scene. They may be active or inactive, but they are associated with the scene. And once you actually get into runtime, they are going to be in memory. The game window is basically what the end user is going to see, right? It's the end result. It's the camera view. So whatever the camera is pointing to is going to be rendered in the game window right here. And then, of course, we have the project window. The project window is going to list all of the assets that are going to be associated with this particular project. So we have the scene window where you do majority of your design work at design time. You have your hierarchy window where you can actually see and visualize all of the game objects that are going to be associated with a particular scene. Then we have the game window where you would see the actual end result, the rendering of your scene through the camera. And then we have the project window where all of the assets that you can access and utilize for your project is going to be listed. This could be textures, materials, source code, audio, visual effects, and anything you name it, right? So anything that you would need content-wise, asset-wise, is going to be part of this assets folder. And then one last window, which is extremely important, is the inspector window. The inspector window is basically whenever you select a particular object in the hierarchy, or if you select an object in the project window, the inspector window is basically going to list all of the properties associated with that particular object, right? So for in this particular case, we have the transform component, the camera component, and then we have an audio listener and a skybox associated with the main camera by default, right? So the transform component is important. All objects, regardless if they are visual or not, are supposed to have a transform component. This is how you place objects in a 3D environment in any 3D package. The camera component is the built-in camera system that basically Unity provides out of the box, where you can basically have access to some of the available attributes to dictate how the camera should perform, what kind of projection it should utilize, what kind of clear flags it's going to utilize, and etc. So this inspector window is extremely important. It will update based on the game object that you're selecting. So for example, if I switch over to the directional light, you would see that again, we have the transform component. Again, all game objects, regardless if they're visual or not, are going to have the transform component, followed by other components that actually define what that particular game object's purpose is. So in this case, this happens to be a directional light, so it's a light source. So we have the light component associated with it. And then we have the type of the light, happens to be directional. Then, of course, you have, again, the public attributes that you can modify and configure at design time. For example, the color, the intensity, the different types of modes that you can utilize and apply to it. And then lastly, just for sake of things, we have the book cover root. This is the custom object. Basically, it's the root of the shape that you see that I've put together. Again, this is pretty primitive, utilizing some primitive geometry to create the shape. And when I select it, you would notice again that we have the transform component, which is supposed to tell Unity how to place it in the space. We have a line renderer component associated with it. You'll see what that does at runtime. And then we have a custom component, a custom class called book cover connector, which performs some sort of a logic, and that will be executed at runtime. And what does runtime mean? Well, runtime means that once you are ready to test your scene, you click on this play button over here. And basically what Unity will do is take all of the game objects that you have in your scene and all of the scripts that are associated with those game objects, and it basically is going to execute them. So in this case, we have this shape. The line renderer is responsible of rendering these lines between the spheres over here. And basically, there's a bunch of other basic code that does some basic geometric transformations at runtime. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this. So hopefully this was a quick introduction and overview of the Unity IDE and the important parts of the IDE that you should get familiar with, and you should kind of establish a layout for your workflow. Again, we have the scene view. The scene view is where you're going to do majority of your design work. The hierarchy window, where you're going to visualize all of the game objects that are associated with a particular scene. You have your game window, which is basically what the end user is going to see, right? What the camera actually renders. And then we have the project window, which you have access to all of the assets that are going to be associated with this particular project. And then we have the inspector window, which will give you direct visual of all of the components associated with a specific game object in a particular in your project, whether they're in the hierarchy or in the projects folder. And basically you would have access to all of the public attributes of those components, right? And components are custom code. Some of them are, for example, line renderer is part of the Unity engine framework. But the following book cover connector is a custom component that we develop, and in the future videos, we'll get into how to create and do more cool stuff. All right, so hopefully this was a good overview. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen, and see you guys in the next video.